The question is we are having P0, P1 processes, P2 processes, and we have to find out the average waiting time, average turnaround time for preemptive shortage of first or shortest remaining time first algorithm. So in this case, we have to find the average waiting time. So what we are going to do, first of all, we will add one more column which is called as a waiting time, having the formula start time minus the arrival time. Along with that, we are going to add one more column which is called as the turnaround time, having the formula burst time plus the waiting time. Okay, so by using those formula, we are going to calculate the average waiting time and average turnaround time. Now how we are going to do, first of all, we will go for the Gantt chart. Gantt chart may we whatever is the arrival time is given, we are going to consider that. For P0 process, this is the first process who has entered the queue, so the chance will be given to P0 to execute. As this is preemptive one, we will go one slot by one slot, so P0 will be executed only for the one time slot. So P1 has entered the queue and it has executed. So what was the waiting time for the first time of the P0 is start time. What is the start time of P0 whenever has entered the Gantt chart? That is the start time. So it was 1. And what was the arrival time? Arrival time is mentioned here for the first term. Okay, now P0 will be executed only for the 1 unit time. So what will be the remaining time of P0 after giving the 1 time slot is 6. Now we are at the second time slot. At the second time slot, who has entered the queue? In the queue, in your question, P1 has entered the queue at the second time slot. Now as this is SJF, we are going to combine your current P0 process burst time with the newly entered process burst time. Newly entered process P1 is having the burst time which is shorter than the P0. So what we are going to preempt P0 now. We will stop the execution of P0 now. The chance will be given to P1. So the chance will be given to P1. So P1 has started. So as the P1 has started, we will go for the first P1 का waiting time. So this started at 2 and what was the arrival time was 2. Now for how much time slot we are going to give, as this is a preemptive one, we will go only one time slot to every process. Now P1 will be executed only for one time slot. So what will the remaining burst time is 3. Now we are at the third time slot. In the question we have to check at the third time slot, whoever has entered the queue, the P2 has joined the queue. So now as this is the SGF, we compare the burst time of the currently execute all the previous processes with the currently enter process. Now P2 has entered the queue having the shorter burst time as compared to all the previous one. So what we are going to do, the chance will be given to P2. So P2 has given the chance. So what is the start time of P2 is 3 and what was the arrival time is 3. Okay, as we are discussing preemptive one only for the one time slot, the P2 will be executed. So what will be the remaining time slot of P2 will be 1. Now this is we reach the fourth time slot, but in the question the fourth time slot is not given. That means all the processes have now arrived. Now what we are going to do, we are going to compare all the burst time, because we are going for SGF. In SGF we are going to give the next chance to the process having the shorter time slot. In this case, luckily the P2 has now was executed by the CPU and it is the second chance is also given to P2. So no need to calculate P2 ka start time and the waiting time because it is in the queue itself and we are going to continue it. So P2 will be given for the remaining time slot, that is 5th. So once the P2 has given, it is not going to be preempted because at 4th millisecond all have arrived, and according to this thing, luckily the P2 is going to be continued next. So that's why we are in the continuation executing P2. So no need to calculate P2's waiting time for the second term. So P2 is now completed. So P2 is now completed. So what is there in our question? Only P1 and P2. Now we had consider all the, we can say, the all the processes based on the preemption. Now this question is converted into non-preemptive question. So based on the non-preemptive SGF, what we are going to do, we are going to give the chance to P1, and once the P1 is given the chance, it won't be preempting. So at what time the P1 has started? The P1 has started for the second term at fifth millisecond, fifth time slot, and where it has stopped previously at third time slot. So that was the waiting time. Sorry, that was the waiting time for P1. Okay, so what was the remaining bus time? So that was 3. So 3 will be added to 5, so that will be the completion of P1. Okay, now the chance who is remaining in the queue, the P0 is remaining in the queue. So this question is now converted into non-preemptive. Once the chance is given, it won't be suspended. So P0 is going to complete its execution. So what is the second turn waiting time for P0? At what time P0 has started? At the 8th time unit. At what time previously it has stopped? At second time unit. So this will be the waiting time for the second time of P0. Now how much time is needed for P0 to complete is 6. So 6 plus 8 will be 40. Okay, now what we are going to do, we are going to complete our table. So 1 plus 1 is 0, plus 8 minus 2 will be the waiting time, that is your waiting time for P0. I can write here because there is no space, is 6. Now 2 minus 2 for P1 is 0, 5 minus 2 is, I can write 2. Now 3 minus 3 is 0. So what is the waiting time? Total waiting time is 6 plus 2 plus 0. 6 for the P0 waiting time is 6, for P1 waiting time is 2, and for P2 the waiting time is 0 divided by 2 will be the your average waiting time, that is 8. Sorry. So 8 divided by 3 will be your average waiting time. Now the turnaround time is your burst time plus waiting time. What was the burst time of P0 was 7. What was the waiting time is 6. 6 here P0 come. So that is 13. Now turnaround time for the P1 is, burst time of P1 is 4. Waiting time of P1 is 2, that will be 6. Then turnaround time for P2 is, burst time of P2 is 2 plus waiting time is 0. So the average waiting time will be 13 plus 6 plus 2 divided by 3 will be with the average turnaround time of your question.